Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting is to order. I'm going to start with roll call. Commissioner Masters.
Here.
Commissioner MacArthur.
Here.
Commissioner Enright.
Here.
Commissioner Sickland.
Here.
William Richardson here. We have it. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Happy to be you today. Have we had an opportunity to review the minutes? Is there a motion with regard to the minutes? A motion has been made and properly seconded, made by Commissioner MacArthur, seconded by Commissioner Sickland, seconded by Commissioner Enright. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Almieri, do we have additions, deletions, presentations, and/or announcements?
We do. Commissioners, we have an announcement of committees appointments. We also have a presentation on the retirement of someone we all know. Plus, we also have a presentation by Tropical Shipping on their company.
Okay, very good, thank you. Is there a motion to delete G7? Manny, Blue Horizons?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, yes, and also a deletion of G7 Blue Horizon update.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion, is there a second? Motion made and properly seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We will go to the announcement committee appointments for calendar year 2016. We have two of the Business Development Board, as well as the MPO. I will maintain, I'll be the rep for the MPO, and asking Commissioner Enright to please be the alternate. She and I can take turns and support each other in the MPO. And you accept that? Thank you. And Peyton, would you kindly represent us on the Business Development Board?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. O'Meara.
Commissioners, it came to a surprise to all of us that a good friend of ours had decided to take a rest and retire. And of course, we're referring to Lori Baer. And they have it. And if it's okay with the commission, we will bring Ms. Baer up and then we can give her a presentation.
Absolutely.
Lori?
Would we all go down together? We know Lori, we love Lori, and she deserves it. I'm going to read this. Presented to Lori A. Baer for her many years of dedicated service to the Port of Palm Beach District, dated this day, March 17, 2016. It's been signed by many of your friends. We wish you the very best.
I have just a bunch of Freedom Roses. They're Irish Freedom Roses. They're Irish, yeah. For Lori Baer. She's been with us
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you,
as a
everyone.
director. He can't get away fast enough. Well, I didn't want to usurp the time of what this commission is to say. How wonderful I have that
enjoyed the experience of Lori Bear. That's who, hey, Lori! And I know she can't wait to get out of here now. I can't imagine how she did this up until, you know, I don't know when your ending is, today the day, but going from Hollywood, Florida, Miami, to this port, and besides that being our port director, she ran this port. She had Manny's position, and she was so wonderful. So it was a great deal of pride that I present these flowers to her. And wish you the very best.
I now ask Mr. Mahoney to please come forward. Jamie, thank you for being here. We're going to have a presentation on tropical shipping. Our largest and one of our most important tenants. So thank you for bringing this to me as to your efforts, company's efforts, and what you do these days.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, Jamie Mahoney, Vice President at Tropical Shipping. Chair Richards and Commission, Executive Director O'Meara, real pleasure to be here this afternoon on behalf of Tropical Shipping. Really a true delight to be here and present a little bit of background and what we do at Tropical Shipping. I assume everybody can see the presentation up there okay. A little bit of an eye chart, but we'll get through it okay, I'm sure. Reliability, commitment, and growth. And those are really the key values and commitments to our customers, shareholders, and our employees on which the company was built. Tropical Shipping, in its roots, really began here in the port of Palm Beach nearly 54 years ago in 1962. And our first sailing from here with the ship that's pictured there, Tropic Ace, happened in 1963, some 53 years ago. That ship where you see our larger ships out in the bay today and here at the port, which are 1,100 TEUs, that tiny ship that ran to Freeport, Bahamas then, was all of 8 TEUs. 8 TEUs.
The full ship, though.
The full ship, 8 TEUs, yes. See, of course, that photo was taken here in the port of Palm Beach at that time. That's the old power plant stack that you see there in the background. Many, of course, recognize that as having been there until it was torn down very recently. Tropical Shipping was acquired by the Salt Chuck Companies on September 1st, 2014, so about a year and a half ago. Salt Chuck is based in Seattle, Washington, and many have asked me questions on it. A wonderful company. They're a privately owned business, and they've got 20 plus transportation-related businesses underneath the Salt Chuck umbrella. Here at Tropical, we've got about 1,000 employees throughout our entire network. We have 15 ships that service our business. Only 12 of them call here to the port of Palm Beach. And we service 28 islands from the Bahamas all the way south to Trinidad, far south to even jump off into South America as we service Guyana. We've got 42 receiving and destination locations, and I'll talk about those a bit more as we proceed here. However, before I get off this page, I did want to mention a very important part of why we're here presenting today and letting everybody know a bit more about Tropical. What we do as a business today clearly would not be possible without a wonderful, true business partnership. And I say the word partnership in every sense of the word that we've got with the port, the commissioners, executive director, and his entire staff. And that transcends from his staff to our entire staff as well. Just a great working partnership that we've got. Next, please. here is a quick map that shows most of our service area that we cover. You see the red locators where the different islands are with Port of Palm Beach. In addition to what we've got here, we actually have a port that we call in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. We call that through a service we acquired back about 16 years ago. And with that service, we also call to Puerto Rico. So as I mentioned earlier, with that long stretch of a run, nearly 4,000 miles round trip up to St. John, New Brunswick, 15 ships will run about 1.3 million miles servicing the business here in 2016. Next, please. A couple of pieces about our service. We have FCL, or full container load service, as it is known, and for us, our on-time vessel arrivals and our reliability, if you think back to the first slide, has been very, very key to our growth. All of those great photos in that slide here are photos here taken within our day-to-day operations in the Port of Palm Beach, with the exception of the top left, which is the Port of Dominica, one of the many islands that we service. Tropical also does loose container load service. So besides full container load, we also do less than container load service. And these photos here show, we've got photos on the next slide as well. These photos show, if you go back a minute, please, Carl. These photos show the brand new facility that we built in Miami in 2001. You see the front entrance there, you see the conveyors to the left, great aerial down to the bottom. It's about 180,000 square feet where we receive anything from the latest iPhone that needs to be shipped down to Guyana, to racks and racks of PVC piping that needs to be strapped to flat racks to move down to the islands. Off to the right, you see the photo of the warehouse going north to south, 50 dock doors from end to end covering that building. Very large facility. That facility comprises 15 acres in total, and again, we bought it in 2000 and built it out in 2001. As I mentioned, 50 doors, about 50 plus employees that run that full time throughout the year. I will say during peak season, we get up to as many as 65. Services performed there, receiving the cargo, labeling it, storing it, as long as the customer is stored. We do a very large business with FedEx, UPS, DHL, United States Postal Service. Just as all of us buy much stuff today through e-commerce and online, all of our island customers do the same thing. And yes, they want it just as quick as we do for instant gratification. They want that iPhone as quick as we can. And they rely on tropical shipping to get it there just as quick as possible. We also have something unique to our business, which is walk-up cargo receipt, where any customer from the islands, whether it's a weekend trip or a small business or holiday shopping, they can come to our facility Monday through Saturday during the holidays, drop off that package. We'll show them, we'll receive it, help them receive it, help them fill out the shipping application and documents, cash, credit card, declaration of goods, and we're ready to go. And it's been a great service differentiator for us, and a very, very key part of our business. To replicate that, and really where we started all of that type of service was about 1 mile from the entrance to the port down MLK Boulevard, which is what these photos here show. That's our West Palm Beach logistics facility that we built back in 1956. We annexed it once, and now we're building our new global corporate headquarters, 30,000 square feet, right there at that facility. I'm sure many of you have driven by. We will be occupying that August, September timeframe of this year. This facility, to put things in perspective, is about 110,000 square feet, 28 doors. And with this facility, we try to focus on customers that are based north of the Palm Beaches, or in the vicinity of the Palm Beaches, or north Broward County. Port of Palm Beach. In fact, that may even be the same photo that Executive Director Alvieri uses to open up his meetings here.
It is.
We're very pleased to have the ability to work closely with the port on working with the land needs and uses that we have to grow our business, and it's certainly a great differentiator for us having this dedicated port operation for tropical shipping. So as you look at the Port of Palm Beach and what we do here, as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 ships that never make it up here to the Port of Palm Beach. One of them is dedicated to running from the Port of Caucedo, Dominican Republic, pictured here. This is the DP World global terminal they have in Caucedo. So here we connect our global freight. So all of our island customers also ship from whether it's Europe, Middle East, Far East, Latin America, and most of that is connected via first leg carriers to the Dominican Republic, to this port, where Tropical then picks it up and on carries it, if you want to call it the last mile shipping logistics, to the destination ports. So many shipping lines that you may recognize the names of: Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, Hamburg Süd, Zim, CMA. Those are all global connecting carrier partners for Sealand, all of which we connect here in the Dominican Republic to go to the islands. I will, however, mention you may from time to time see those same containers in the port. In most cases, they're arriving in Miami or Port Everglades. They're trucked up here for on carriage through the Port of Palm Beach. Another transshipment port of ours with 8 ship calls per week is the Port of St. Thomas, USVI. This is a photo of our port operation there. We've been operating there for 48 years. Great operation, very key transshipment port, feeding the north part of the Caribbean for us. The Bahamas, which is where we started our business in North Freeport and Nassau, also very key business, both in volume and in frequency. We have 5 ships or 5 sailings per week that call to Nassau. This is our logistics facility and warehouse operation there in Nassau, newly built just 2 years ago. And lastly, this is my last slide, just to put things into perspective, here is a photo of our ship, the Tropic Palm, berthed in the port of Anguilla, down the BVI. So the year-round population in Anguilla is 15,000 people. There are days where we'll make a port call with this ship. We make many port calls with this ship, where we disembark 12 TEUs or 16 or 18 TEUs. But come season, when there are 50,000 people on the island, it really makes it worthwhile. So again, our gratitude to the Port of Palm Beach today for inviting us to share a little bit about tropical shipping. We truly enjoy our partnership here in the port, and wishing everybody a great afternoon.
Jamie, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions or comments from the board? A fantastic presentation, and we know that you are continuing to grow. We are acutely aware of your Tropical's desire to have access to more land here. So,
Thank you very much, Jerry.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for that restoration.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to the consent agenda. Would any board member wish to pull something from the consent?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull E11.
So pulled. Pulled. Another moment. Is there a motion to approve the items remaining on the consent agenda? Is there a second to approve the modified consent agenda? Moved and seconded by Commissioner MacArthur, Commissioner Ray. Approve. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item E11. Commissioner, do you want a full presentation?
No, we'd just like staff to explain what happened, and then they did a wonderful job, and they saved us quite a bit of money, but I'd like them to explain it.
Well,
E11 on the emergency repairs?
Earth One Emergency Repairs, we had, myself along with the maintenance staff, we put the Tucker patches on, the seawall where there were holes. This $27,000 is for the repair behind the wall, where we can hire a contractor to pump a mixture of foam and chemicals behind the wall. And it'll void it, we grew to about 20 times the size that we put in. And about the size of the void that we filled is about the area of the dais up there, from the front of the dais to the wall, from side to side. And that's what the recommended approval is for.
Thank you. Any further comments on this, Commissioner Sigley?
Where are we gonna talk about the dredge? And, is that gonna be under your comments?
Yes, that'll be my report.
And Commissioner Enright, please.
I just have, one question, Mr. Higgins, about, E13. You have number 2 when you talk about fees. On E13, number 2, when you talk about the fees. And I guess my question is, you have, when a candidate qualifies for the position, which means they pay the fee. So if you're talking about federal candidates, or let's say if you talk about the Senate race, for example, then you're talking about June 1st, after they have qualified, am I correct? So anytime prior to that, then they, cannot use our facility. Am I right?
When I was, as I was
Yes.
drafted, that was my
Okay.
intention.
So after
So
qualifying,
that-
and for presidential candidates is once they have announced. I guess.
Well, you're making a good point.
Because I can see where you saying qualifying for federal positions for the Senate and for the House. But then for presidential candidates, I guess it will be when, that's the only differential within the two.
I'm gonna ask for a brief presentation, because I want members of the public to be able to understand this issue. Manny, who on staff can present this item, please? A brief presentation.
Actually, if you like, I can do it.
Please.
Sure.
That's the only.
Mr. Chairman, while you're on this, I'd like to just add one thing. In addition to qualified, I think we should also include incumbents. If a United States Senator or our local congressman wants to use the facility, I don't think we should exclude them because they're not a candidate running for office.
Well, if they're an incumbent, then they will.
Let me say this, let's have a presentation first, please. I think a lot of us in the audience may not be aware of that we were discussing.
Commissioners, as you know, our cruise terminal now gets used once every other day. So it becomes a little challenging to be able to lease the terminal for other operations than the Grand Celebration. It wasn't that long ago that we went ahead and approved a $10,000 fee in the event that you wanted to use it. This board went ahead and approved it. Most recently, we received an inquiry, a request from the presidential candidate to utilize the terminal. Unfortunately, there was some miscommunication, and they did not hear the 10,000. Instead, what they heard was no fee. Not the case. Nevertheless, it came to the day before the candidate was supposed to be here. So what we did is, well, what I did is I negotiated a lower amount. From 10,000, we negotiated down to $2,750 for the use of the terminal. As it turns out,
Can we ratify that?
yes, that Friday we had a special meeting in which we went ahead and ratified that amount of $2,750. We ended up paying total $8,900 for the cleanup, the setup, Wi-Fi, and everything else you can think of, particularly labor, staff, so on and so forth. So on that $8,900, of course, we will be reimbursed at $2,750. That basically brings us to a request from Commissioner MacArthur to exempt any charges for certain positions who are set to be elected or about to be elected officials. And this is what we have put together. I can again mention that it is challenging, physical aspects of it, being able to move furniture back and forth. It is labor intensive, and it does cost a lot of money. And of course, when we leave here, when the function is over, then it's up to our staff to make sure that the terminal is back into the position that it was. And sometimes it requires them to be here, sometimes overnight. As such, there is a high cost associated with this type of.
Is there, Andy, thank you, is there a request from the board? I mean, there's significant expense, why would we not charge?
Well, I was, my at least the instructions that we received during the last special meeting was to look into it, staff to analyze it, and I believe that what the commissioner wanted is, at the very minimum, for me to have the authority to go ahead and what would be the word? Waive, yes, thank you, waive the cost.
Commissioner Stickler, for his commissioner.
Yeah, I could see a major problem or something like this. I mean, I think the thought is good that we can open it up. But the problem is you could have 15 people run for governor and someone that, you know, whatever, and he wants to use the port, and he's gonna say, well, you let so-and-so use it, so I want it the next day. And it's the same for a lot of these owners. I mean, you get, you know, all these kind of minor party people that would say, well, if you're not charging, you know, the current governor or whatever, why would you charge me? So I think we need to really rethink this, and I don't think we can say, well, if you're an incumbent or something like that. So I'm not really in favor of this myself, but I'm just.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Enright.
I see a problem with that. We can end up having hundreds of thousands of dollars that the port has to pay. And if you're a candidate, I feel that they should be able to, I have no problem with using the facility, but then when it comes down to the expenses, we should not have to incur those expenses. The candidate should have to take care of that. And then, when you say qualifying is interesting too, because that's at a certain time, like this year's June 2nd. So therefore, they can only want to use this facility from June 2nd as you're talking about a state position to that time. But maybe we might need to just say federal positions and then just get rid of the rest of, but I really believe that we should stick with the fee that they must pay for all of their expenses and the port should not be liable.
In the first place, we've had very, very few requests for this over the years. I don't think it is a problem. If it became a problem, we certainly could revisit it. I think if a presidential candidate wants to come to the Port of Palm Beach, the positive publicity we receive is immeasurable. I don't think we have enough money to buy it. And as far as too many candidates, if commissioners would go to Exhibit A, it lists the people that would be able to come, and it's not every candidate. I do think if we're going to do this, in addition to qualified candidates, we need to include incumbents. If a sitting governor or a sitting congressperson or a U.S. senator wanted to come, I think we should allow them to come.
I don't have an issue with allowing individuals to come. However, I do not want to spend $1 of port money to subsidize a campaign, and I won't do that. I won't do that. Everyone can come so long as we're able to fit them in, but not at the expense of the Port of Palm Beach district. So as it's presently drafted, I cannot support that. Any further discussion on item?
So I guess, where we are is that they can come, pay the deposit, but all expenses, they would have to take care of it. That's what I mentioned before, and you know, you agree. So, I guess we're on the same page, as long as they pay for their, expenses, and all of them.
Yeah, the most important thing is not only is it the expenses, it's the time and effort of our staff and the availability. And we we have, this should have been here.
It's a no, it's a no, it's a no,
Right.
it's a no, so.
So, I think we should, if we're gonna agree to something like this, I agree with, the chairman. They gotta pay for it, and also it's subject to availability. So,
Council?
Yes, I would like to suggest, if you're going to take a vote on this, I would like to suggest two possible changes. And one would be to raise the deposit amount to 10,000 from 2,500, because what I'm hearing is that $2,500 doesn't come close, and we would wind up having to chase money, which sometimes is hard from a political campaign, and wind up closed up by the time we get there. And the other is that I would like to add qualification language for federal offices, that the individual shall have qualified for the federal office. And I don't know what the board's pleasure was on the incumbent issue. The incumbent is.
You know, even though you're an incumbent, having to qualify would simply keep your level, field level. I think we can leave it at that. The person has to qualify and pay a $10,000 deposit to the board. Is there a consensus? And if so, is there a motion along those lines? Ms. LeBron?
I can't, make that motion, I'm sorry.
Okay.
well, if we're all going to do it, it's gotta be a minimum of 10. If we don't do it, we can just leave it like it is, and then candidates would have to contact us, and then it'll be up to the commission to do it. So I'm kind of really big with that. I don't like to make a policy, because I know that staff in the past has always said, you know, it's a big deal when we have people in the cruise terminal. So, you know, I don't mind it, but maybe we should do it on a case-by-case basis.
Is your preference to leave it as it currently stands? Very good. Your thoughts, Commissioner Wright?
I like the case-by-case basis, and then, not the monetary, I don't know, the $10,000, we can look at it. But we must have some money, we must have a fee there. We cannot just leave it open, because then it becomes a fair out.
Commissioner Sickler, is that a motion to vote no? Is that a motion to not approve the amount of $9?
Yeah, I'll move that. We do not approve the bond.
Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, George. Any further in readiness? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. We will not modify. Please.
Would you please make a motion to approve the E11 item that was
Thank you.
pulled through the
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve E11? Motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Almira.
Thank you, Commissioner. What I'd like to do now is go over my executive director's report, and we'll start with a common category called around the board. Recently, Commissioner Wayne Richards and I went to the Sugar Co-op headquarters office located in Belle Glade. We provided John Huntley, who's to your left, and Antonio Contreras, who is the president of this farm, with a picture of one of their barges being loaded of course with sugar. Very, very well received, very happy with our gesture. While we visited, Michael Sally, the new John Hale, informed us that the port warehouse, the sugar port warehouse, will be renovated from what it looks like now to possibly what the next picture will look like. And it would also have some further upgrades, particularly in and around the walls. So again, a real good reception. They were really, really happy with our visit. And I think this is what we're going to be looking forward to within the next year, so we've been told. Also, Commissioners, I'd like to bring to your attention that a company by the name of CMA CGM, one of those companies that Vice President mentioned a little while ago, brought in an 18,000 TEU container ship called the Benjamin Franklin, and it made its first U.S. call at the port of Los Angeles in late December 2013. It was the largest container ship of this capacity to ever call a seaport in the United States. The call marks a strategy by CMA CGM to provide customers with the reach of global network combined with convenience of personnel service. It also reflects CMA CGM's faith in long-term growth potential of the U.S. economy and its commitment to increase its U.S. market share. Now, notice in the next picture, if we were to take that ship and bring it, obviously not going to be able to bring it here, but that's what it would look like. It would just take the entire port, let alone not being able to make it through our inlet.
And what port is that? Did you say which port?
Los Angeles, Port of Los Angeles.
Yeah, we need to make that clear because otherwise tomorrow we'll see in the paper that it's coming in here and ticketing and so.
No. I think that people have learned that those ships cannot make it, All right, next is the City of Rivera Beach. The port presented the City of Rivera Beach Council and Police Department with a check for $535,000 for the grant. A portion of this came from that $1.9 million that was awarded to the port as part of the Seaport Cyber Infrastructure Protection Program. PBSO and RBPD will use the funding to enhance its situational awareness platform and monitor the seaport's cameras, inlet cameras, sonar, coastal radar, and other sensor and data feeds through an integrated platform system that will enhance maritime domain awareness and incident response capability, among other security enhancements. Commissioners, I have also informed you that there are 2 new transportation funds opportunities. Recently, an $800 million in new Department of Transportation DOT FAST Act funds for national and regional significant critical freight and highway projects. These are multimodal and multi-year funds. Port should also look at the DOT National Freight Strategic Plan to address some of the challenges in the report. The application deadline is April 14th. I'm happy to mention that we have already submitted our preliminary grant request to FDOT in Tallahassee. If we were to be awarded, we have been told that primarily could be used for rail and rail enhancements.
Which we have a significant need.
Correct. Other port promotional presentations. Of course, the check presentation to the City of Rivera Beach on March 24th. Carl Baker will be hosting the Greater Lantana Chamber of Commerce for a port presentation. Under the events category, please refer to agenda item E10, community events. We had the Seafarers Center ribbon cutting March 3rd. The North Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce breakfast, that was yesterday, March 16th. The Seafarers Center blessing and fleet radio interview airs on Business Radio on March 27th. Upcoming events, commissioners, are in the AAPA Spring Conference in Washington, D.C. from April the 4th through the 6th. National Porch Day, the AAPA promotional on April the 5th. Happy to report that Commissioner Priscilla Taylor will be the sponsor of a port resolution. We will be there on April the 5th to attend the meeting, and the resolution will be read. Also, the Blessing of the Fleet, April the 9th, and Relay for Life, Rivera Beach on May 14th. Lastly, this past week, there was an unannounced Federal Railroad Administration inspection of the port rail operation. We're happy to report that no deficiencies were noted, so therefore we'd like to congratulate our rail crew on an outstanding job. With that, Commissioners, I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner Sigmund.
Manny, I might have missed it, did you mention about the
Tiger Grant is part of that, two transportation fund opportunities. There are $500 million for DOT Tiger Grants to fund capital investment in surface transportation infrastructure that has significant impact on the nation, metropolitan areas. The deadline there is April 29th. Now, let me mention why I recommend we proceed. To get a Tiger Grant is probably easier to win the lotto. Every time that we have applied, we always get the same format letter saying, you know, had we not run out of money, you would have been next. And what happens is, if you go to Alabama or if you go to Texas, you'll hear the same type letter being sent to them. That's number one. Secondly, it is a very, very intense, costly procedure. You have to hire an outside consultants, particularly economists. And if I recall correctly, our slip 3, we spent over $28,000 to get a study completed. And again, to get that letter saying, you know, we just ran out of money. You would have been next, kind of a deal. So with FAST, we don't have to do that kind of research. We don't have to spend that kind of money. So, and this 800 million rather than 500, so therefore I think we have a much better choice or better odds for us possibly being awarded.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Army Corps of Engineers Maintenance Dredging Project was originally funded for $3.9 million. This year, the total project cost was awarded at $5.3 million as the Army Corps of Engineers owned other contingency funds. In the inlet and harbor areas, the pre-dredge survey, when we did afterwards, after the original bid survey, showed 33,000 cubic yards increase from the original bid amount. The Army Corps of Engineers has approved an $800,930 change order to take care of that. That would be in between the jetties, so they're going to get all the material out of the jetty. In the settling basin, the pre-dredge survey showed that there were 73,000 cubic yards increase from the bid amounts. This would have been a $993,600 change order. All of this is not approved or funded. Currently, the Army Corps of Engineers settled on an additional 1,000 cubic yards of dredging at $13.80 per cubic yard, or $13,800 for the change order. At the present time, Jeff Littlejohn of WSource, which is our ports consultant, he's working on some additional funding opportunities and checking into some ideas and ways we can maybe fund that extra $1 million to get that out of the settling basin area. With that, the turning basin area in the Inner Harbor is complete, and they're waiting on the final survey to be completed by the Army Corps staff. The dredging, the dredge will be back in the inlet between the jetties probably on Sunday. The project should be complete by mid-April. With that, moving on to the annex property rezoning and land use.
One moment.
So what are we gonna do if we don't find $1 million? Just not do it? I mean,
Right now, if it stands the way it is, the Army Corps of Engineers will not do it. So the settling basin is at the very top of the ceiling there, that's out in the ocean, is where the settling basin is. So what it would do is the sand as it travels south along the shoreline just won't get into that. It will fill up sooner.
Right.
And then once it fills that up, it spills over into the inlet.
we
But
get the money?
the plan is to get everything in the inlet and everything in the Inner Harbor completed right now, unless we can get this other funding. And I'll make a phone call to
Okay.
Congresswoman Craig's office tomorrow.
Okay.
Tom, that's actually what I wanted to ask him. I know Mr. Littlejohn's talking to the town of Palm Beach, but I think we should also talk to not only Congresswoman Frankel, but also our new representative, Congressman Elsie Hastings. You know, we need to bring as much pressure to bear as possible on the Army Corps. And I also, seeing as we're on this now, I was going to do it later, but he's not here today, but Mr. Gerald Ward, when we met with the coalition, he had brought up the suggestion that we really needed to have a consultant that worked for the port to oversee the dredging project. And we did, we went forward, and it's already paid off. We wouldn't have known this had he not been doing this, and now he's working on the funding. So even though Mr. Ward's not here, I think we all owe Mr. Ward a round of thanks, and I appreciate what he did, and I think in the future it will really pay benefits. Thank you.
Okay.
Continuing on.
We met with the Safety Inlet Coalition a couple days ago. Karen Murdoch was kind enough to introduce the new president, and he's going to speak in a few moments. The Safety Inlet Coalition has been very, very firm in their support of maintaining that which we are approved to have. And I know that Karen had a call with some journalists, and the thought, there's some confusion. The thought was those monies were being procured. So we'll backtrack, Karen, look into that, because you thought through the congresswoman that it may have been.
She told both of us that.
Yeah, that the additional funding is there, so
She said.
we'll follow up with that, with your assistance, thank you.
We will.
For the annex property, our first public meeting will probably end up being in April of this year. We will have a minimum of 4 public meetings. The first one will be the City of Riviera Beach Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll have a meeting in front of the CRA Commission, and then we'll have 2 city council meetings for the first and second readings of our rezoning. We received the comments from city staff. We met with city staff on March 14th to review and discuss them. And as far as I know, that I think that we're not that far off from each other on what needs to be done. I have scheduled a meeting next Wednesday with our 4th team. That would be Larry Smith from Gary Dietrich and Ryan, John Phillips, our surveying consultant, Casey Long, and myself. We want to finalize or verify our final pass and the modifications to the application that need to be made. And then currently the city is also coordinating a meeting with the city of West Palm Beach to get their input, and that could happen as early as next week. There will be more to follow on this item. Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you. We have a card for this item from, I believe, Myra Kutson. Ms. Myra? Hello.
Hello, Commissioners, staff. I'm Myra Kutson, and I am the mayor-elect of the town of Palm Beach Shores. So I come with a request from my residents and the Turtle People. As you well know, the Turtle People run my beach. The dredge has very bright lights going all night long, and it's keeping my residents awake, and we are during turtle season, and they are there at the end of the, between, exactly as you're saying, working between the jetties, which is disturbing the turtle nesting process. So is there any way that they can look at dimming the lights or working in some other manner?
Please take it back as direction from us to do all you can.
Actually, we have a weekly conference call with the Army Corps and the contractor, and that exact issue was brought up, and they're tilting their lights down. The contractor has addressed it.
Great.
So if it's
Thank
still
you.
a problem,
So Tom,
We'll be back.
please give Mayor Kutson your phone number. So you, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Glad to have you here in our meetings. We will now go to the Government Affairs Report, Mr. Pinsky. And as Mr. Pinsky approaches, in the past, I think only jumped up and down once, have said, our bill needs to be approved. I didn't say or else, but I sort of intimated that. And after being very active with Mr. Pinsky's efforts and watching him in action, I have a much better understanding and perspective of that which you did for us. So thank you. And that's where we're going to show the video. But let me pass you the baton.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Commissioners, Richard Pinsky. It was a very disappointing outcome as far as the local bill, which we'll come back to in a moment. The overall FSTED funding, which get some money every year, has gone from 15 to 25 million. That is good news. Ken Hearn will be happy about the new Security Advisory Committee that's been adopted, and reviews of security funding that will go through the state will be the same operation as FSTED. So they're going to have an FSTED, they're going to have an FSTED Security Council as well. There are monies in the budget. There's monies that would help the settlement pond to the north of the jetty. I talk a little bit more. I didn't even know we had that ask of Commissioner Peyton Parker's request that we contact Congressman Elsie Hastings. And that would be very productive as well. So there is some money in the report that I gave to you. There is a Seminole Gaming Compact update, which I will bore you with. And then there is a handout in there as far as you can see that this past session there were very few bills that were passed, and how many are still on the governor's desk, and so that may be interesting.
Richard, bore us for a few moments, please, because obviously the compact and the approval or lack thereof does impact this board. So please give us a brief.
I know we have entertainment coming, so I'm trying to make sure we're popular. The gaming bill, the gaming compact was proposed by the governor, and it was $3 billion over 20 years. As you know, as of last July, the blackjack portion of the compact was expired, and so they still had about another 3 years left of the overall compact from the last time, but the blackjack portion expired. So that was a good time to perhaps re-up all of it. So that was what the governor proposed after a lot of negotiations. He left one item in there in the compact, which some people call the poison pill, and that was that our own Palm Beach Kennel Club gets slots out of the 5 other counties that also had a referendum. So when that went to the legislature for their ratification, you can imagine the legislators from Lee County, Washington County, Gadsden County, Brevard County, that all said, and Palm Beach County, that all said, wait a minute, we passed referendums as well. So when the legislature got a hold of it, they loaded up, in addition that their counties would get slots. Also, there's a big issue of decoupling, and that is when a pari-mutuel, whether it's a highline front ton, or dogs, or even thoroughbreds, if they're not making the number of racing days, and that could be reduced, they would be able to have slots as a way to subsidize their income. So they put a decoupling in there. There was a provision that Palm Beach County would reduce the number of slots. It's what they call got very heavy. And so when that bill got so heavy with everybody hanging everything on there that they wanted, it became untenable. Senate President Andy Gardner, who represents the district where Disney, most of the theme parks are, drew the line and said, no, I'm not going to pass this bill. This is an expansion of gaming in the state of Florida. I'm not going to stand for that. So the bill basically died, which now, in the report, there's shifts to the courts. Because unless they scale that bill back, they're not going to come back for a special session, because it's still the same Senate President. So now you have a court case going on right now that's challenging the Gadsden County ability to have slots, because they had a referendum. If the court decides with Gadsden County, then you will see maybe as many as 19 different pari-mutuels getting slots based on that court ruling. Some people believe that's not going to happen. Then there's also the federal case that the Seminoles are pursuing, which goes back to 2009, and some other issues, including the blackjack issue, is in there as well. So the shift now, because the legislature didn't act, the governor couldn't produce a compact that was acceptable to everybody. So now we'll see what happens in the next several months with the courts.
Which court does it go?
There's 2 cases are going on. The state level one for the slots is in Supreme Court, the court, and they're going to hear oral arguments in May. The federal court is in the Federal District Court of Tallahassee, and that will be compact that the governor proposed, it would have allowed the Indians to have 7 full-fledged casinos. And that would have allowed, and then that would have allowed Dade and Broward would have then been allowed to have blackjack, no bank card games, and then he threw in Palm Beach and the club for slots at that tipping point. So there is a parimutuel in Duval County that's currently running bank card games, and the Department of Business and Professional Regulation has been waiting to see what happened during the legislature before they try to act on them. So I think you'll see that action happening very soon as well.
Okay, please proceed, thank you.
Okay, so with that, there was, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Chairman, there was a great deal of effort. I'm not going to bore you with everything that has to go into getting the bill heard, numerous materials, handouts. We passed our first committee, except one no vote, otherwise it was passed. The next week we were to be heard. It was a coincidence, I'm sure, but that was the week that we hosted presidential candidate Clinton. The bill got held up. Thank you to Sugar, particularly David Willett with the Sugarcane Growers Co-op, was able to break that log jam, and so we got heard the following week. We passed out of that committee unanimous, and finally got on the last committee stop, and then we heard from the governor's office. Maybe they didn't think we were going to get that far, I don't know, but then we heard from the governor's office, and it all sort of came to a head. There was an amendment filed the night before. They really didn't give us any notice that they gutted all of the language pertaining to salary out of our bill. Representative Legray had that amendment, and we walked into that committee meeting with our sponsor, Representative Bill Hager, and he seemed to be accepting the fact that the governor would not do unless we did it. He supported the amendment, and then I think what we have here now is an opportunity for you and the commission to look at that committee meeting and how we actually turn that around. I would like to introduce Kathleen Rowe, who is aide to Representative Kevin Rader. Welcome. And you'll see Representative Kevin Rader is one of the stars of this film, and who was vociferous and very supportive. And we owe Representative Rader a great deal of. He was the only member of Palm Beach County delegation on that committee, and thank God he was there. He fought for us. So with that, cue it up. I hope I'm not wearing the same thing.
You are. I ask for your indulgence for some remarks. Yesterday, when I spoke to many of you members and stopped by your office, at that time, I thought I was asking for support of a local bill. I didn't know I was going to be on the ropes this morning. So, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a few remarks. The amendment, Port of Palm Beach, of course, considers unfriendly. We don't think it's the right thing to do. We think it's unfair, and we certainly think it's premature. And I'll tell you why. This process, I've been in this process 35 years. This is my 35th session. So I know this process is unfair and things don't always happen, compromises take place, but when something happens that is unfair, it doesn't make it less unfair just because the process is unfair. So just to follow a couple of comments by our sponsor, and I want to thank Representative Hager. Yes, it is the 4th busiest port in the state of Florida. It's actually the 18th busiest port in the country. It's in the top 20, which is significant. Our revenues are approximately $20 million a year. We contribute about $185 million to the local economy. We're primarily an export port. 80% of all of our cargo goes out, which is unusual for Florida ports. The port employs approximately 2,800 people, and clearly we are an economic engine to the region. There's also another distinction. We don't use tax dollars and we don't use public dollars. We're a user fee and tenant-driven port. The money that pays the operations, that pays salaries, comes from the tenants, not private dollars. We celebrated last year our 100 years of being a port, and we're unique for another reason. There are only 3 ports in the state of Florida that have elected officials. There's 14 deepwater ports. 11 of them are county employees, city employees, public employees. There's only 3 ports, Fernandina, I had someone ask me where that was, it's just north of Jacksonville, Canaveral, and the Port of Palm Beach. They have elected bodies in some cases, same constituents that would elect you. Representative Rader, our local delegation representative on this committee, our champion. The bill was introduced as a local bill for that reason, because everyone in the Palm Beach County delegation, all 13 members, recognize that this is a local bill and this is for local elected officials. So in addition to not taxing, these folks, because of their charter, have to come to the legislature every time something happens in the charter, in this case a raise. The last time was 1999, they went up to $9,500. The way we arrived at $16,000 as a new floor was we took a 3%. Every year, if it just went 3% a year, we'd arrive at approximately $16,000. Now, why is it unfair? Because the 2 other elected ports have a different system. They get to determine their own fate when it comes to salary. Fernandina, I'll just read you from their charter. Each member of the board shall receive a salary not to exceed $24,000 per annum, as may be fixed from time to time by the board. They get to vote for themselves on what they're going to make. This was adopted in 2005. I think there may be only one of you that was here in 2005 and voted for it. But Canaveral in 2014, this legislature voted a salary increase to Port Canaveral. I'll read you from their charter. The Port Commissioner shall be entitled to an annual salary allowance. The salary allowance shall be payable monthly and apply to all services rendered by each Port Commissioner under this Act. The salary allowance may be adjusted annually by the Board of Commissioners. We are the only port that has to come to Tallahassee and ask. I would love to substitute amendment to take either Fernandina or Canaveral, and let's create a level playing field. Now, finally, why is it premature? We just learned yesterday of the discomfort. I wasn't going to mention who, but sponsor of the amendment did mention the governor's office. So we have been scrambling to try to recover and determine what we can do to mitigate that. So we've gotten letters from our port tenants. Sugarcane Growers Co-op. Not many of you know, but every stick of sugar grown in the Everglades is exported out of our port. Rybovich, some of you may have heard them, port tenant. Heavy lift service, how appropriate for this amendment. Tropical shipping. That's what makes us the 18th busiest container port. T. Parker Host. These are the folks that pay the salaries. These are private enterprise, all saying yes, we support this because we know. Because what happens for each salary, it comes out of pocket for anything over that these port commissioners go through. I support Representative Rader's great suggestion. We did understand Representative Hager's office, not to put words in his mouth, but they were to have a meeting yesterday with the governor's office to talk about it. Unfortunately, the circumstances in Pensacola preempted the governor's ability to have that meeting with staff. So we're just starting. The 2 Chamber of Commerces, the North Palm Beach Chamber, the Chamber of Commerce of the Greater Palm Beaches, are now rushing to take this to their executive boards. The BDB, the Business Development Board, which is the arm of Enterprise Florida in Palm Beach County, called the governor's office yesterday. We have just started to deal with the discomfort that the governor's office may have. I implore you, now is not the time for this amendment. I asked my good friend, Representative Lake Ray, and I worked on port issues for 8 years now together. We've been in the trenches. I would implore you, Representative Ray, to withdraw that amendment. Give us a chance to please communicate with the governor's office. You can do this on the floor just as easily if we cannot make headway. With that, Mr. Chairman, I close.
Thank you, sir. You had some questions?
I have a question.
Cheryl Mayfield would like to ask you questions.
if, and you might have said this, but in Cape Canaveral, what is the salary of the Port Commission there?
I don't know, Mr. Chairman.
You recognize?
I don't know what the salary level is right now. I don't know if anybody can answer, but they get to determine their own fate and vote their own salary.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Recognized for a follow.
Do you know what the revenue is for Fernandina Port, being that we do know their salary is $24,000 a year?
They're approximately $20 million as well. That's according to their website, which I just looked at again this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Santiago for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the beginning of the presentation, the bill sponsor mentioned the current funding that's supporting the port is not a dime, I think, or a penny of it comes from taxation, even though they have the taxing authority, I think is how it was described. If this bill were to pass without the amendment, do you believe that would trigger now them trying to initiate and exercising that taxing authority to tax people to pay for this pay increase?
You recognize for response.
I'm not a port commissioner, so I can't speak for them, but I've been around them for almost 10 years now, and I will tell you, there's no way that those port commissioners would vote to tax the people in their port district. They are a thriving port. They're doing very well with tenant and user fees. They're committed for that work, and that's just part of their philosophy that no tax dollars.
Representative, did you have another question, sir? Or are you all right? Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, currently, maybe I missed this question. How does the port now, how is it positioned salary-wise compared to other ports that are out there?
You recognized that. I think you addressed that, but please go ahead and.
Yes, and again, the 11 other ports are all county employees, so it's easy for them to say, go cover a meeting, go attend a port conference in Atlanta or someplace, because it comes out of county tax dollars. For the port commissioners to attend a meeting, a lot of it comes out of pocket. They have to do it. So Fernandina, that was, I think right now, they're at $12,000, although they can go to 24, and if they feel a need, they can do it themselves. We're stuck at $9,500. So between the 3 elected ports, we are the lowest.
Any other questions, Representative? Go ahead. You have another question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for clarifications, if we're not in a position to do it today, then we're asking the very port that you're representing to go to the taxpayers and ask them for an increase for their salary. Did I hear that correctly?
Do you want to respond to that?
I don't think I understood. There would not be, again, I'm not a port commissioner, but I seriously doubt, 99.9% sure they would not go to the taxpayers to get a salary increase. That's just not the way the port operates. They haven't done it, as the chairman said, in modern times, as Representative Hager said, in modern times, and they operate as a privately funded port.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming. And I can assure you that the intent of involvement in this committee is to preserve the bill.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And I ask for your indulgence for some remarks. Yesterday when I
Okay, yes, you Representative Rader's remark? No, but share with us what happened, because that was quite intriguing. Was really intriguing.
So there's a couple of times, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there were a couple of times on the screen where you saw maybe some bodies behind me. So what was happening, the dynamic was, and Pete remembers this from years ago, members of the committee will vote count. And when we got into that meeting, that amendment was a done deal. That came down from on high. So with Debbie Mayfield, Representative Mayfield, one of the votes, she started realizing, because she's the ranking member, she's realizing they may not, after the presentation, they may not have the votes because there's new information. For the bad amendment. So Representative Smith, who you saw run back behind me,
Representative Hager to say, you don't have the votes. They are gonna kill the Lake Ray amendment. Do you want us to withdraw, don't you wanna have Lake Ray just withdraw that amendment? So they had already, while I was talking, they were running around, but you couldn't see, and they were counting votes. So the next thing that happened after I got done, when our bill sponsor, Representative Hager, stood up.
He said it was a friendly amendment.
He was asked the question when it was obvious what he wanted to do, and he said, let's adopt the amendment. Now, that was surprising because he knew if they didn't have the votes, thank God Representative Lake Ray, the sponsor of the amendment, knew he didn't have the votes. So rather than having it shut down, he withdrew it on his own, but not on our bill sponsor's recommendation. So they withdrew it. We then, next stop was the floor. We were supposed to
Kevin Rader, though, Representative Rader literally lit a fire at one point as well in support
Yes,
of our
and I wish we had captured that because Representative Rader's remarks were so forceful in reiterating the position of the Palm Beach County delegation. And he said, I will tell you it is 100%, and he looked at Representative Rader and said, except for perhaps you, but we are totally against this amendment. This is not right. And it was Representative Rader's comments that helped bring that withdrawal of the amendment.
All right, any comments or questions? Ms. Pinsky, thank you for your efforts. It was not for lack of significant effort and support. So thank you. Appreciate it. We're going to move this along. We're going to go to G1.
Mr. Chairman, item G1 has to do, G1, G2, and G3 all have to do with the Burr 17 project. I would like Paul to start out with talking about the port's match funding. We have, I'll have a presentation on the new JPA that we have with Florida Department of Transportation. And then we have the award of the Burr 17 project. So if we don't do one, I'd like to go them all together if possible.
That's fine. We'll vote on them separately,
Item G1 has to do with the reallocation of the port's cash, and I apologize for the odd shot, but the nature of my business. Just to put it into perspective, currently at the end of the month of February, the port had $24,694,000 of cash. That is broken down into two main categories, unrestricted and strictly restricted. Unrestricted cash, which is available for use in our operations day to day, was $10,639,000. We had $6,366,000 we are required to keep for our debt service. We had $6,150,000 dedicated to our major capital projects, and we had another $1.5 million that was in other restricted accounts, basically renewal, replacement, and business development. The port is required, as part of the JPA agreements, to ensure that we have the required matches available to each project that we commit to. In November of 2013, the point entered into a JPA with the FDOT for the refurbishment of Berg 17. At that time, the estimated cost was $9.2 million. Our 50% share would have required the port to have $4,601,000 set aside for it. If you look at the column there, you will see just about in the middle of the page, we had $4,601,000 established for Berg 17. Current estimates for Berg 17 have exceeded the original estimate. It is now anticipated that the total cost of the project will be $12,202,000. As such, this $3 million increase will require the Port of Palm Beach to use $1.5 million of our own funds towards the project. What you see in front of you is my establishing the $6,101,000 that we need to have set aside for FDOT. I did so first by taking all of the other capital that is not described anywhere else, moving into Berg 17, and reducing unrestricted cash by $2,267,000, allowing me to come up with the $6,101,000 that we need. At this point, if this were approved, we would have sufficient cash on hand to show FDOT that we had the money to match their share. However, I had to go one step further. I could not leave the port without any capital funds that were at all for other projects. So my recommendation is to reestablish a capital projects fund of $750,000 for uncommitted future projects. My suggestion is that we take additional $250,000 from the unrestricted cash, and we reduce the renewal and replacement and the business development reserves by the $250,000 each, allowing $750,000 to be reestablished as restricted cash. If I may explain the impact of this. With respect to unrestricted cash, we would have a balance of about still over $10 million. That would still represent in excess of 12 months worth of cash operating expenses, more than acceptable by the investment community and our auditors. So there is no issue there whatsoever. With respect to renewal and replacement and business development, this does not affect their ability to spend budgets at all. Does not touch that. It's just cash allocated. By the bond covenants we have, the port is required to put $62,000 each and every month in each of those accounts. So the $250,000 I'm removing will be replenished in a very short period of time. It does not reduce what they have. It's just, you can look at that money that's there as the excess that's occurred over the past years when we have underspent our budgets the past years. So I'm not asking for your approval now. You need to see the other two items. What I'm trying to explain is that with the reallocation of cash, we can cover it if that's what you choose to do.
All right, thank you. This time, let's discuss this grant.
With the new financing, we have a JPA for a total amount of $1.5 million. That's with FDOT. It would be 50-50 funding, $750,000 for the port, $750,000 for FDOT. And that JPA expires on December 31st. We also have some future financing of a total amount of $1.5 million of a future JPA for FSTED funds, which would be switching around projects. That funding was previously earmarked for our passenger loading bridge replacement, and that will be available in July or August timeframe. For the award of the bid, the first 17 bids were received on February 1st. We had 7 bidders. The base bid ranged from $11.2 million to $14.1 million. The base bid included a reinforced concrete pavement section. We also had 2 alternate pavement sections. Alternate number 1 was rolled concrete pavement. Alternate number 2 is our typical asphalt pavement section. The apparent low bidder, LM Heavy Civil Construction, had a base bid of $11,167,767. With using alternate number 2, the asphalt pavement section, the revised project bid is $10,420,567. Port staff is recommending that we award to LM Heavy Civil for the base bid with alternate number 2 in the amount of $10,420,567. Max Marino, he's the CEO for Heavy Civil, and his staff are here today, and we're available to answer any questions. Port staff recommends approval of items G1, G2, and G3.
Will Ms. Marino please come forward? Good afternoon, Mrs. Marino.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
I think we're about to welcome you to the board. We're going to see shortly. Sure. Ms. Marino, are you familiar with our fair wage and benefit policy?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you gone over it thoroughly? We want to make sure that you're aware of it, you understand it, and that you're ready, willing, and able to comply with it.
Yes, I am.
And that's very important to us. All right, very good. Commissioner Sickman and Commissioner Henry. Thank you for that.
Tom, could you tell me, when we first went up, we're going up to bids for this, I think we thought it was gonna be like $9.2 million. Now I know we're getting 1.5 from the loading bridge. How much difference are we gonna have to come up with all the loading bridge money and everything else? What else do we have to?
Our part will be, we were coming up with a total of $3 million with this JPA of 1.5, and then with the future JPA in July or August of 1.5. Each one of those are 50-50. We have to come up with $750,000
revised estimate requires us to have 6.1 million set aside, so we need to come up with another $1.5 million of our cash.
That's after taking the loading bridge and even with it.
That would be the matching part of that. That would be the matching part. The 1.5 loading bridge, the matching part is 750,000. The $1.5 million that we're going after, in addition to that, is another 750. Total port cash, 1.5 million.
Okay, originally, the only thing that I'm a little confused at, it was always like 9.2 million. Right, and I just didn't know.
And we built, when we built slip number 3, we had some deep settlement issues, and consolidation of soils, which we had, if you recall, we had some sinking of the gantry track bridge, the roads out there. We are building a secant wall, which is a more expensive wall, and it should lessen that impact to that construction. So we should not have any issues with the deep consolidation, and that's why we went to that. With that, we have, in the circle in red is our total amount of funds available, the 12.2. And then the next one, Carl. When you take everything that's been encumbered and including this, we're gonna have about a $600,000 cushion.
I just have one question about the $1.5 million. How long do you anticipate it takes us to get that done?
The additional 1.5?
Yeah.
That, we expect that to become available in August or September of this year.
Okay, way before the process.
Yep, way before the process.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you.
Tom, on the 1.5 million that we got from FSTED for the passenger loading bridge, did we have to match 750,000 of that?
That's correct.
And so we've already done that?
Yes.
So that's additional for money. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have three, you may be seated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have three cards, Sean Mitchell, followed by Jimmy Keller, followed by Mr. Henry Rowe. Please, welcome, Mr. Mitchell.
Good afternoon, and I love the fact that I can share a special day of St. Patty's Day with you all. And we'll start with a toast. There are good ships, and there are wood ships. The ships that sail the city. But the best ships are friendships. And that may always be. We've always been very friendly with the port. We appreciate all you've done through the years, starting back in 2000 with Rafael Randon, yourself, and Blair, putting this policy in place. You've always strengthened it. All I know is that we concur as president of the Building Trades and an iron worker, that I know that I've met with Mr. Marino, and I feel that it'll be smooth sailing with the needs of the port and to put local skilled workers to work. So I concur with staff, and I appreciate all the hard work that Manny and Tom and everybody you all submitted to the table to it. So I wish you a happy St. Patty's Day to let you know I concur.
Followed by Jimmy. Followed by Jimmy Keller and then Andre Rowe.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rachel Semple, I just want you to know that we stand in support of the IBEW electricians, your decision with this new contractor. I think is going to be a wonderful fit in the area.
Thank you, Jimmy. Mr. Rowe.
Hello, my name is Andre Rowe. I'm president of Construction Craft Workers for Community 16 Favors. We too are in support of this contractor working on this project. We are aware of the commitment to the community, the citizens of West Palm.
Thank you. Are there any further comments by this board with regards to items G1, G2, and G3? If not, we're going to entertain a motion either singly or.
Sure. I moved that we approve all three, G1, G2, and G3.
A motion has been made and probably seconded to approve items G1, G2, and G3. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries unanimously 4-0. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Mastix is not in the room. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item G4 is the slip number 2 trench drain repair project. We re-advertised that project on January 31st. We held a pre-bid meeting on February 11th. Bids were received on March 3rd. 3 bids were received as shown in your agenda material. This will repair 75-foot of trench drain. We're going to start from the south end and work north. The remainder will be completed next year when we have, get it into the next year's budget. The board is respectfully requested to award the slip number 2 trench drain repair project to Falcon Contracting, Inc. in the amount of $27,333.
Tom, there's quite a disparity in the bids. I mean, you have any idea why one would be 70 and one would be 27?
I think the last one, they wanted to make up some money from the previous project.
Well, I like the first one.
I do too.
At the appropriate time, I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. That's appropriate. A motion has been made and properly seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none motion carries unanimously, 4-0. Thank you.
Commissioner, item G5 is the Port of Palm Beach District Master Plan. Casey Long will give a brief presentation.
Welcome, Casey. Thank you.
Casey Long, my voice all back in 2005,
The board did a white paper master plan, basically took the old one aside after 10 years. The previous one was done in 1995 and started clean. The consultant that was selected didn't shoot the report, and that's court asked CH2ML to step in and close with that. In 2011, after the 5 years that passed, many of the projects in the master plan, including some of the legislative items, MJ5 had become obsolete, so the court elected in 2011 to move forward with some minor amendments and text amendments within the master plan in 2005. As part of that, the court also elected with the changing economic times and a different change in the market within the court to get a economic and marketing assessment done as part of that amendment in 2011. That all went through the process with the county, became part of the county's comprehensive plan, and then part of the state comprehensive plan. I bring all that up to say that when you go to the DOT, when you go to various entities for your funding, they look at your master plan, and is it consistent with the state comprehensive plan? And in order to do that, it needs to be part of the county's master plan. Earlier, we were speaking earlier in the year regarding doing the master plan update. Just for some clarification, the early intention of this project is to update the capital projects for the Port's master plan. Since various of the projects, as you can see up here on the board, have been completed. If you look at project number 1, that's the overhead power lines. Project number 3, slip number 3 is wrapping up. Some of the board's interest in doing various rail projects may involve moving them within this master plan. So the intent was to move forward with updating this plan with project summaries and to meet with various stakeholders to discuss the master plan. As those dialogues occurred with DOT and many other people, got the impression we were going to have some public input, sit down and have some stakeholder meetings, take a look at this a little bit deeper. And then in discussions with the court director, CH2ML did a market assessment for crews more on the capacities of this terminal for crews back in 2011, 2012. Court directors expressed some interest in maybe retaining the services of a more specialized cruise experts, something like ferries, specialty cruises, different types of markets for this, for Palm Beach to see what's out there and how you can grow in that aspect, adding on to the market and economic piece. To wrap up, basically when we discussed with the DOT, I know Tom had some discussions, I had discussions with Joan Sanchez, various other people who've got strong ties with SDA. The need for another market assessment, the need for another economic assessment is purely at the discretion of the court. Feel that you're able to make your decisions and to align your master plan with the markets that are there, and then wait for another time to do a market assessment if you can. So this is intended just to be a minor update. The work order in front of you is extremely conservative. There are a lot of unknowns. We're not aware of how many meetings we're going to be drawn into, how involved the changes will be. So we've taken a conservative approach. It is an hourly, not to exceed
one based on your business and what you believe your needs are. I would say that past history, from what I've seen with the board, is about every 10 years you've done one. But if you do this now, it will have been 10 years with just an update, a second update since your last meeting. So I would say within the next 5 years, you'll be able to consider with the changing economic times, the changing markets, the opening of Cuba, the expansions of rail, various food options, to maybe do it later on in this decade.
Okay, do you want to supplement that?
Yes, I do. In my previous experience with another board, that was the routine, a 10-year full master plan, and every 5 years it would be some sort of an update. Now, in our case, what we're proposing here is an update primarily of the capital. Then let's wait another 5 years, at least our suggestion from staff would be to wait another 5 years to put a full master plan in place, with all due respect to folks at CH Metal. They can also bid on it, but obviously we would go on the street and see what would be the best proposal.
Okay, Commissioner Siegel, thank you.
Yes, you keep on saying like minor, I've read your scope of work, and this is a $250,000 amount that we're spending, so for $250,000, I would assume it's not a minor, job.
The $250,000 is the amount of funding that we got available. I'm sorry.
The work order, if I may, I guess, is $6,000 for CH Mill, which includes approximately $30,000 in meeting time that may or may not occur. There are 4 or 5 meetings with the county, multiple meetings with the city review, each stakeholder meetings, and internal staff meetings. And then separately from that, there are graphics such as these and goals and objectives. Separately from that, I've asked Joan Sanchez to also join us. She's been involved in the past. She has a vast amount of experience with port planning as well as the port planning process and various funding agencies. And then the small cruise ferry sub-consultant. At the time, I didn't have the name plugged in here, but we're looking at Rhea, who is an expert in cruise marketing, cruise economic assessments. They work directly with major lines as well as small lines and all the major verticals.
So Tom, you were saying?
The work order is in the amount not to exceed $141,394.23. The total amount of funding that we previously got, I believe, back in December was $250,000. That would be $125,000 from DOT, $125,000 from us. It's 50-50 funding.
Where does, so this is 141, where does the rest of the money go? I mean, if we get to
If we hit 250, we're gonna spend it all. If we don't, it goes back into the, we don't.
But he's saying it's 141. So
Yep.
what, I mean, we're just, there'll be more added to it, is that what?
If that has to happen, yes.
Yeah.
Right now, it doesn't have to happen, so the monies would just stay in our bank account, the FDOT's bank.
Okay.
The original budgeting came with the assumption you may do a full market and economic assessment, which we're not moving forward with. We've actually added a small piece, which is just the cruise.
Thank you.
I'm gonna call, we have a card here, Mr. Keith May, please come forward. As you walk the minutes again, this gentleman is the new president of the Save the Inlet Coalition. I met with him a couple days ago, along with Karen Marcus, very fruitful discussion. I'll say Mr. Mady is he was very well prepared and well versed in the matters we discussed. So welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Richard, and the commissioners. I had done some homework. I read the plan, which is pretty extensive. Thank you for giving me a moment here. I won't take much of your time. I am the recently elected president of the Save Our Inlet Coalition, taking the place of Ms. Bobby Lindsay, who has taken a position on the town council in Palm Beach, and is still involved in the commission, but can no longer be at the helm, shall we say. I don't know if Mr. Mahoney is still here from Tropic Pacific, but I was delighted to see his presentation. I told Chairman Richards this the other day in our meeting. I moved to Palm Beach County in the late 1970s, and John Birdsall, who founded Tropic Pacific, was a family friend of my wife's family. And I went to the Miami Boat Show with him to pick out the Moran Sea equipment he was going to put on that ATCU vessel. They had been operating with only compasses and dead reckoning. course, they had Celestial application that they're available as well. But anyway, I just wanted to let the commission know that the council, the Save Our Inlet Coalition is very interested, obviously, in a lot of the things the board does, but we're very interested in the 5-year plan, whatever work is done to update it or to add information to it. If you would like to have the opportunity to provide input in that process at the appropriate stage. We understand from our discussions earlier this week that it may not be a full redo of the plan. You may wait for some later dates to do that. That is obviously your discretion. You know your business better than we do as far as whether economic conditions and operating parameters have changed so much that you should be better if you don't. But we would welcome the chance to input on it. And any other matters you'd like to work on, also. And you will have that opportunity, so thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion, any further discussion from this board with regard to the master plan? Going forward.
Motion to approve?
The motion has been made, probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. All those against, motion carries unanimously. You may brief, thank you. You may brief, and finally update. Please.
Gregory Picken, Gary Dietrich, and Ryan Ford Council. As the commissioners know, the board was served with the 3 code violation notices by the county all related to the facilities that are under lease at the Palm Beach Maritime Museum over on Peanut Island. I met with county staff. They expressed an intention and desire to help the port tenant, Palm Beach Maritime Museum, come into compliance with the terms of the lease. I'm sorry, with the violation notices. They set up a site meeting at the museum tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So at the facilities tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we're going to go over. The point was to at that time spend some time with the tenant and.
Sir, would you go ahead and see?
To spend some time with the tenant, showing them how they might be able to come into compliance. I spoke with Anthony Miller today. They are going to have Palm Beach, related to Palm Beach Maritime Museum. They are going to have representatives there, and Mr. Miller indicated that he had representatives already speaking with people at the county. So I am asking for 2 things in connection with this. And one is to address the county code violation notices at the direction of Executive Director Mr. Elmire. There'll be some times we may have to request some additional time to comply or to defer hearings, and I want to be able to go through Mr. Elmire, because we may not have time to come back to the full board to ask for that kind of permission. So that's number one. The second thing is I was told by the county that when that there may be fines imposed, and to the extent that fines are imposed, that the county will consider abating those fines in the event the entity that has received the code violation notices has acted diligently to cure them. And in that case, in this situation, that would require the port to be proactive with the tenant and to put them on notice of their violations, which I have done, but I have not sent a default notice to them because I did not feel I had the authority to do that without direction of the board. So I made them aware of the notices, but I did not serve default notice. I think we need to do that to show our goodwill and intent to comply with the county notices.
Mr. Pickens, what are the, in brief, what are the 2 notices of the two notices of default? Are with 3?
I'm sorry. There are 3 code violation notices. One of them relates to land use. The other one relates to doing work without permits, and the third relates to several building violations. There, one of them, or a few of them, actually relate to public safety, and that's one of the reasons why the county is moving on this, is with the diligence that they are, and that they are expecting the port to move on it diligently against the tenant as well.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner Carlin, sir.
Greg, I'm just confused about one thing. I understand the county is most concerned with what they consider safety issues. The other two are relatively minor. The default notices, are you saying they're in default because they're not maintaining the property up to code?
Yes, sir.
But wouldn't we wait until we give them time, now that they've been put on notice, to respond before we found them in default?
Well, they would be, the purpose is to, I mean, once we've been served notice that there are violations, we would not want to go through, the next thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a special master's hearing on whether the port is in default. So I think what we are doing is passing on the responsibility to the tenant to cure these things, so that when we appear before or ask for deferrals of the hearings on the violation notices, that we are showing our good faith in moving forward and diligence towards moving forward with the tenant.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sickler.
Well, I've expressed my opinions for the last year on Peanut Island, and I think so far it's not quite a disaster yet, but we're inching closer and closer to this. So now my feeling is if we issue a default notice, then the Maritime Museum is going to start hiring attorneys, and this is going to be a major expense for us. And I just don't see if we have an alternative now, because what we've done in the last few months, getting the county involved instead of just allowing the lease to expire in a year. You know, for some reason that we kept on going and going, and I just think this is a very bad situation that we're put in right now. And I don't see any bright spot at all for the port. And I don't know if Mr. O'Meara has any suggestions or somebody on staff of the way we're heading. I just think this is going to be very costly, and the only person that's going to come out on this is our attorney, who's going to make a fortune in legal fees. Well, that's my feeling. I just think this has been, you know, totally screwed up for the last year.
I wish to assault you on behalf of all attorneys.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but Mr. O'Meara, you could just tell me how I'm looking at this the wrong way.
I have a different take on this. First, Mr. Pickens, when does our lease expire exactly?
At the end of, I believe it's the end of October 2017.
That's a year and a half. We cannot wait.
But there is a renewal, there's a negotiation renewal provision. In other words, it could be renewed on mutual agreements.
I feel that we have no choice but to proceed, because the year and a half is just too long, and the county would have probably, if we don't get this taken care of, then they will assess more and more and more fees that will come on the port, and then we can be liable and then be sued. So, my take is we're in a tough situation, but we have to require that the Maritime Museum fix this, and we need to give them a date. I think we need to give them a time certain date that everything must be repaired and done, so that the county then will okay it as far as support, get us out of the hot.
I would concur. I believe it's really a pre-default situation. I have served as a prosecutor for code enforcement and as a special master for code enforcement for many years in West Palm Beach. And the landlord unfortunately bears the ultimate responsibility. But when when a user has caused a violation, you have to give the user notice that this is really your violation, and give them a reasonable time period to comply. Failing to do so, you default them and you get them the heck out of there. So I do believe we have to give them we should give them a reasonable time period to comply.
Chairman, I believe what, you know, to speak for him, but I believe what Commissioner Sicklin was saying is we support doing what we have to do, but we don't want to initiate any more actions than we have to to protect the interests of the port.
That's,
No.
That's it.
And I think that's,
yeah.
We'll give you more direction over it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the only other point I wanted to make is that I'm pretty sure that the Maritime Museum is not gonna spend the money to fix all the code violations. I mean, I could be wrong.
Let me, if I may, I do not have a card here, but I recognize Mr. Miller, and there's a gentleman standing up there, which might be with him. Mr. Miller, do you, or anyone with you wish to speak for a couple minutes on this item?
Yes, if we could,
Please,
Rich is my lawyer, yeah.
Please state your name and.
My name is Richard Joseph. I've appeared before you before.
You look familiar. Welcome.
And you look familiar too. I agree with the principle that you outlined. We're not looking to spend time or money at all in connection with litigation. That's not what the issue is. But we do have some problems. Maritime Museum has met and will continue to meet all of its obligations that it has under the terms and conditions of the lease. The notice of violation that Mr. Pickens has presented came about as a result of a historical packet of violations, which, if you looked at them, could perhaps be as old as 20 years and could relate to things that existed prior to the lease. It could have existed prior to the Port Authority or the county having any connection or authority over the island. And if you look at the notice of violation, we don't have anything in there that states when the violation occurred, whose responsibility it was to fix it, because under the terms of the lease until not very long ago, and perhaps continues even to this day, the obligation of the Maritime Museum, which I want to bring to your attention because I know that you have so many things to do, you don't know the details of the lease. We're obligated to maintain the premises in the condition that they found it. And it was the county's obligation.
Is there not a provision to comply with all state, local, and federal laws? I'm sure there is.
Well, I can tell you that over a period of time, there have been a plethora of inspections that have gone on and approvals. I'm holding just one in my hand, where the inspection department has come out, inspected, you're going to have an affair, everything is fine, but if you bring in extra electrical, you're going to have to get a permit for that. The bathrooms are fine, you've got that, and you have your 2 or 3 or 4 events that you're having to the public, and everything else that they inspected had passed inspection.
With respect, that's an argument for you and the code enforcement board. But I understand your argument.
Not only that, but it would be good if we knew the source of the violation. The recitation of the violations here, when I'm telling you that they came from a packet of things, some of which were 20 or more years old, and had been looked over and passed time and time again.
Once again, that's for you and the code enforcement board, okay, special master.
When Mr. Miller came to obtain a permit, when it came time, and I'm glad that you said what you did, so I'm more familiar with what your background is, Mr. Chairman. When Mr. Miller came and asked for a permit to do something on more than one occasion, he was advised by the parties in authority that this does not require a permit. Now that doesn't say that he could do something that would be dangerous, and he'd be the first one to stand up here and say, I'm perfectly willing to do whatever is necessary to make sure that none of the things that I'm operating in, open to the public, are going to be dangerous. But he was told by the authorities,
you do not need a permit.
Are those the county authorities?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's, I can show you if you'd like, the provision of the lease which states that the following buildings and structures and facilities are exempt from the Florida Building Code, as provided by law, and any further exemption shall be as determined by the legislature as provided by law.
Counselor, I don't believe in, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe this body wants to infringe upon your rights to do whatever your client can do over there legally and with proper authority. We're the owners, we're the landlords. So the buck stops here, it hits us, and when it hits us, we're just gonna pass it, I hope we just pass it on to you.
I understand.
So we're not, I don't believe anyone up here wants to adversely affect the operation, that's happening over there. That's not the goal here. We simply have been hit with violations we believe, obviously based upon the activity or efforts of the Maritime Museum. We're just gonna pass it on to you and give you, I hope, some reasonable time for you to comply. Hopefully you will comply. Your client will. If your client does not comply, it will come back before us. And I would assume we would then say you're now in default.
And in response to that, I would like to assuage the concerns, and Madam Vice Chair, you were correct. As far as the violations are concerned, and Mr. Chair, you understand that these dollar fines are subject to discretion, and as long as we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we would like to be able to have a free and open dialogue and be able to come back to you, because we don't know who may be behind this effort that started late last year to assert violations in an effort to, what we believe, to terminate the lease, not wait for the expiration or the negotiations for renewal. We don't know or understand why.
You are a tenant, so we're gonna definitely operate in good faith, I promise you that.
And that's all we're looking for, that's all we're asking for. We want you to know that we're gonna operate in good faith, and if we can do that, and if we can find the basis of the violations, and if we can apportion it effectively, because there are things that Maritime is responsible for, and there are things that Maritime is not responsible for, and there may very well be, based upon what I've just read to you, things that don't come under the purview of the building code at all. But having said that, I will assure you at no time will Maritime Museum participate in or do anything that is going to create a health hazard or a danger to the public.
Thank you for your perspective. Speaker, what is that hearing? Is there a hearing coming up?
There are a couple of different violation cure dates. One is March 31. That relates to some issues related to public safety. That's one of the reasons why the county was so cooperative in setting a date to meet with me promptly without, having schedules not be able to get arranged, and why they came out, agreed, or actually suggested they come out and have a site visit tomorrow at 1 o'clock to help try and address it. So March 31, something needs to be done to defer that date.
Well, and if on March 31st they come out and if they determine there's not compliance, I believe there would then be a hearing coming up.
There would be, but if we can put off the March 30th, if we can put off that date, that's what I wanted to do.
Fines are not accruing at this point.
Correct.
No, they're not.
Right, no, I'm sorry, I thought you said they were not.
Our fines accruing at this point.
Correct.
Are fines currently accruing at this point?
It's my understanding that they are not.
No, because it has not been an adjudication, so we need to understand the process. So, it's up to this body, but I think at this point, this is simply for information. I do believe we should give direction that we pass these violations on to our tenants and give them a time period to comply. That is what this body should do at this point. I think that's all that we should do at this point.
I agree with you, but they need to comply in time, in the necessary time. Did the county gonna give them a drop dead date of all of these things.
Yes.
So they need to, to whatever they need to do before that date, so then it can come back to us.
By that date.
Oh, by that date. Okay, by that date.
Man,
Well, final comment, I'm gonna close it to.
I just have a quick comment in connection with that, my experience over the years too. If there is a drop dead date and there is work that's being done, and the county sees that there's work that's being done, it's not occasional, it's always that we just would go back and say we need more time, and they would give us extra time. And I've never seen it not happen.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pickens, is there a recommendation from you?
Two recommendations. One, that in terms of dealing with the county on the compliance dates, that I worked with Mr. Elmira, I take direction from him on getting approval to extend it, et cetera. And that you authorize Mr. Elmira to give me that authority based on his direction. And the second is I would like to at least take the step of formally passing on these violations to the tenants and make them aware that to the extent that they become violations at the county level, that we will, that they will adjudicate these violations, that they will be treated as a default under the lease. I'm not asking for authority to commence litigation, to file
I understand.
anything.
I think that sounds abundantly reasonable. Is there a motion along those lines, please?
Second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Did you get that? Any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Final item, G8.
This is Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line, their office lease. This is a sublease amendment. On June 8, 2015, Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line and the Port of Palm Beach entered in a 10-year office lease agreement for about 9,300 square feet on the 5th floor of the building. A recent reorganization and personnel changes at that organization and several affiliated companies. As a result, they've asked the port to consider allowing them to sublease the premises so that they may be able to consolidate their offices in Broward County. The current office lease does allow for subleasing with Port Authority, but it does tie the sublease to a change in operator for the operating agreement. All I'm asking for is the board to allow an amendment to be made so that the process can be
I'd like to make a motion to allow the executive director to execute an amendment to the Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line LLC office lease so as to allow subleasing without any corresponding change in the operating agreement.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Commissioner Sickler.
One question, I don't know if you or Jared have any idea who they have in mind to sublease. Have they mentioned anyone yet, or is
They have someone on staff, Commissioner, that they will have go out and actually work with a broker to sublease the space.
Okay.
They don't have anyone in mind that I'm aware of.
So they're on the hook until they.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for the question. Any further new business?
No, sir.
Comments from the public? I do not have any additional cards. Would any members of the public wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of things. Want to compliment staff on the film that they showed at the North County Chamber of Commerce. I have one suggestion. I think you should include something we're all very proud of. When you change it next time, I think you should include the fact that we have not taxed for some time. Second, I wanted to suggest that staff consider when you prepare the 2017 budget, that you start to consider succession planning. We have our senior staff are all about my age, and they may be all leaving about the same time, and we need to have a plan. I mean, any organization has to have people ready to take over in these positions. I'd like you to consider that as you prepare your budget. And finally, we've talked many times about Tallahassee, and many times we've been told that we have to codify our charter, and it's been like 10 years over. I would like the board to give staff direction to make that a priority. Let's, you know, set up the meetings and do what we need to do to get that done before the next legislative session, which I believe begins on March 7th, 2017. Let's be upfront with that. And maybe the first one we could have would be an overview, just bring people to the port and give them a tour. I don't care if we have to feed them, but just get them to know the port. And there are a lot of our neighbors that are very close that actually know very little about the port. And I think we need to work on the codification and make sure it's done before next year. And I would like my colleagues to direct staff to make that a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sickles?
Yeah, on the codification, I mean, we've been trying to do this now for forever, and I think I've talked to Richard Pinsky about it numerous times, and I think we don't have very many people that are opposed to it, but we have like possibly one, and you know, if we can just get them on board, then I think it will be a fairly simple process. So by working with Richard, I think hopefully we'll be able to do that this year.
I just wanted to mention, and I wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner McDonald mentioned as far as our staff. I know that we're all aging and we're getting there. I'm looking at everyone that's, we need to bring in new blood, young people. And we're gonna get there. And with that in mind, I know engineer, we have Tom Levine, and maybe in 5 years, I don't know what's gonna happen, 6 years, he's gonna drop off and in our finance department, service as well, but I just don't know. So we need to really do our budget, and we need to look at maybe bringing in 1 or 2 more people, just train them in to get them on board and knowing what we're doing as far as an engineer and someone in finance, however, but we need to start planning for the future. We're not gonna be around here forever. I do though, I do plan to be around a while, but I think we need to go on and start looking at our budget and incorporate positions for the future.
Want to congratulate staff. I think Terry Monks, Manny, and everyone else has done a great job in getting the message about the port out in the last 2-3 months. There is not a week that goes by that they are not out somewhere, and I'm usually out with them making presentations. So you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And it's only with community engagement where we have the support that we need when we wish to move this port forward. So please keep up the very good work on this. Thank you. Our next meeting is April 21st. Is there a motion from Blair to adjourn? Yes. We're adjourned.
Oh, I forgot to say, thanks for the birthday basket. I appreciate it.